Samurai Nippon. The Battle of Nagashino, how firearms changed the fate of warring states Japan.
The moment when iron and gunpowder changed history.
The battle that unfolded at Nagashino in 1575 was not merely a clash of armies, but a revolution that rewrote the tactical history of Japan. The proud cavalry of the prestigious Takeda clan versus Oda Nobunaga's innovative firearms unit. What emerged from this collision between tradition and innovation? We delve into the full picture of the Battle of Nagashino that determined the fate of the warring states period.
Before we begin, please subscribe to our channel and hit the like button. This will help our videos appear in your recommendations.
Chapter 1. The Structure of Conflict.
Swift as the wind, silent as a forest. When the Takeda army appeared on the battlefield bearing the banner of Furinkazan, Wind, Forest, Fire, Mountain, it is said that enemies trembled in fear. The sensation of their elite cavalry charging was particularly soul-stirring. The sound of hooves striking the ground, banners cutting through the wind, the creaking of armor and resounding war cries.
I am Takeda of Kai.
How many commanders shuddered at that voice? Takeda Shingen, feared as the Tiger of Kai, had begun to bear his fangs from his domain of Kai Province, present-day Yamanashi Prefecture, surrounded by steep mountains. Shingen's name had already reverberated throughout Japan due to his 5 fierce battles with Wasugi Kenshin at Kawanakajima. The cavalry led by Shingen was the embodiment of swift as the wind, deliberate as a forest, raiding as fire, immovable as a mountain. Having trained in mountainous terrain, they possessed robust physiques and refined tactical vision. Once on flat ground, their mobility overwhelmed enemies. Imagine it, the crimson-clad army advancing before your eyes, the ground trembling with their thunder, their armor flashing in the sunlight. It would not be surprising if enemies were paralyzed with fear, losing their will to fight at the mere mention of the Takeda name.
Discard all conventional wisdom.
Oda Nobunaga, who rose from being a minor lord of Owari, was a revolutionary who shattered existing values. Innovative in his tactics, he was quick to recognize the potential of firearms imported from the West, focusing on their mass introduction and organized deployment. Nobunaga formed an alliance with Tokugawa Ieyasu of Mikawa, steadily expanding his influence. In 1573, Takeda Shingen fell ill after the Battle of Mikitagahara and passed away. His eldest son, Takeda Katsuyori, succeeded him and decided to continue his father's westward campaign. However, among his retainers there were persistent murmurs of, "If Lord Shingen were here." Katsuyori was constantly subjected to such comparisons.
Chapter 2. Katsuyori's Leadership.
Though Katsuyori was an excellent commander, the influence of his father, renowned as a great general, weighed heavily on him, and he was constantly compared to Shingen. Being born the son of a great general is both a blessing and a curse. He dreamed of surpassing his father's achievements and carving his own name in history.
To capture a castle, first take the enemy commander's head.
This was a phrase Katsuyori often uttered. He favored aggressive offensive tactics, tending to choose bold attacks over cautious defense. Among the Takeda retainers, there were cool-headed commanders like Yamagata Masakage and fiery personalities like Baba Nobuharu. Katsuyori often sympathized with the latter.
Lord Katsuyori, I expect this castle siege to be prolonged. Perhaps we should retreat once and regroup before the Oda and Tokugawa forces come to its relief.
The sincere voice of Yamagata Masakage echoed in the command tent. He was a veteran retainer of the Takeda, having achieved numerous military accomplishments since Shingen's time. His counsel carried weight. However, Katsuyori's eyes were already filled with determination.
We cannot retreat. To pull back now would disgrace the Takeda name. Continue the siege.
With those words, the wheels of fate began to turn. The worried expression on Yamagata's face, the satisfied smile of Baba Nobuharu, and the complex emotions stirring in Katsuyori's heart. At that moment, Katsuyori could not have imagined that rejecting this counsel would lead to later tragedy.
Chapter 3. Strategic Developments.
In early 1575, Takeda Katsuyori intensified his invasion of Mikawa province. First, he deployed his main forces at Shitaragahara and began conquering castles under Tokugawa Ieyasu's control, one after another. The captures of Yoshida Castle, present-day Toyohashi City, and Tahara Castle progressed smoothly, and the Takeda army gradually advanced into western Mikawa. What might Katsuyori have been thinking at this time?
Having come this far, I have fulfilled half of my father's wishes. Now, I need only destroy the Tokugawa and threaten the Oda.
Such thoughts likely occupied his mind. However, battlefield realities always bring unexpected developments. Soon, Nagashino Castle would appear in Katsuyori's line of sight. Nagashino Castle was defended by a mere 500 men under the command of Castellan Torisune Aemon. In April 1575, Katsuyori surrounded this small castle with approximately 15,000 troops.
It will fall soon.
Katsuyori thought, but contrary to his expectations, the castle did not easily surrender. Under Tori Tsunamon's command, the garrison maintained a stance of absolute resistance. As days passed, fatigue began to show among the Takeda soldiers continuing the siege. In the rainy spring encampment, men began to fall ill. Furthermore, as supply lines stretched, procuring food, arrows, and gunpowder became increasingly difficult.
If we continue the siege, the castle will fall before enemy reinforcements arrive.
Katsuyori believed this and continued the siege. However, the passing time resulting from his decision would eventually lead to irreversible consequences.
Don't waste time on a small castle. To catch a big fish, you must ignore the small fry.
These are words reportedly spoken by Yamagata Masakage to Katsuyori. He was concerned that the longer the siege of Nagashino Castle continued, the more likely it became that the Oda Tokugawa allied forces would come to its relief. Indeed, intelligence units of the Takeda army had reported that Oda Nobunaga had begun mobilizing a large army. Time had begun working against the Takeda forces. Yet Katsuyori did not heed this advice. Perhaps he felt that interrupting an ongoing siege would damage the Takeda reputation. Or maybe he was driven by the thought, Shingen would have certainly captured this castle. In any case, this decision became the prelude to the Battle of Nagashino historical irony.
Chapter 4. Oda Nobunaga's Innovative Tactics.
This black iron tube will change the form of warfare.
Oda Nobunaga was a daimyo who quickly recognized the potential of matchlock guns brought by the Portuguese. At that time, many commanders viewed this new weapon as merely a supplementary tool, but Nobunaga instinctively understood its revolutionary value. Imagine it! The matchlock gun difficult to handle compared to traditional weapons, time-consuming to reload, unusable in rain. While many commanders questioned its practicality, Nobunaga saw in this weapon the potential to transform Japanese battlefields. Nobunaga protected gunsmiths and established mass production systems. Legend has it that he prepared 3,000 guns for the Battle of Nagashino, an astonishing number for the time. The very concept of operating so many firearms at once was revolutionary.
Do not fire all at once, but divide into 3 ranks and fire in sequence.
This is said to be an extract from Nobunaga's orders. He arranged his musketeers in 3 rows, devising the 3-line volley tactic where one row would fire while the others reloaded. The major drawback of matchlock guns at that time was the long reloading time after firing. However, by adopting this 3-line volley method, continuous fire became possible. It created a situation where lead bullets would constantly rain down, even as the enemy charged. Behind this tactic was Nobunaga's practical thinking. He valued organizational tactical efficiency over individual samurai valor. Here lay the embryo of a modern military perspective, distinct from the traditional emphasis on individual techniques like one-on-one combat. Nobunaga further skillfully utilized the terrain of Nagashino. He positioned his musketeers on a hillside and erected palisades called takeyarai in front of them, physically preventing the Takeda cavalry from charging at full speed. Additionally, he stationed spear units behind the musketeers as a defensive line in case the enemy broke through. On both flanks, he positioned mobile cavalry units to guard against attacks or encirclement from the sides. This composite formation demonstrated Nobunaga's comprehensive tactical vision, maximizing not just the power of firearms but also terrain features and the characteristics of each unit type. It is for this innovative tactical system that later military historians evaluate the Battle of Nagashino, the beginning of a military revolution in Japan.
Chapter 5. Takeda's Legendary Cavalry.
Swift as the wind, silent as a forest, raiding as fire, immovable as a mountain. The Takeda cavalry, symbolized by these words, represented the premier military force of the Warring States period. Particularly in the battles of Kawanakajima and Mikitagahara, they confounded enemies with their overwhelming charging power. It is said that when Takeda's Crimson Army appeared on the battlefield, enemies froze in fear, sometimes fleeing without even fighting. Upon arriving at the Nagashino battlefield, the Takeda army immediately reconnoitered the enemy formation. Veteran commanders like Yamagata Masakage sensed something unusual in the Oda Tokugawa allied formation.
Lord Katsuyori, the enemy has positioned a large number of firearms. We should avoid attacking from the front and instead try to outflank them.
Yamagata Masakage made this suggestion, but Katsuyori's decision was different.
In the name of Takeda, we attack from the front. There is no enemy who does not fear our cavalry.
He chose a frontal breakthrough with the traditional cavalry charge. The background for this decision may have been his experience of success in previous battles, or perhaps he did not want to show weakness in front of his retainers. Either way, Katsuyori could not have imagined that this decision would mark the final gallant display of the Takeda cavalry.
I am Takeda of Kai.
On the morning of departure, the Takeda warriors looked at each other's faces, exchanging silent vows. Perhaps they instinctively understood they were standing at the boundary between life and death. Yet there was no trace of fear on their faces. They had accepted living and dying for honor. This was their pride and way of life as warriors. They faced their final charge, staking their personal honor and the prestige of the Takeda house. At this moment, they had no way of knowing they were about to perform what would later be recorded in history as the last full-scale cavalry charge.
Chapter 6. The battle unfolds.
On May 21st, the two armies confronted each other at Shitaragahara, approximately 2 kilometers northeast of Nagashino Castle. A battle with an overwhelming numerical disparity was about to begin. Approximately 15,000 Takeda troops against about 38,000 Oda Tokugawa allied forces. The morning sun rose from the eastern mountains, illuminating the steel of armor and swords. Commanders on both sides were making their final strategic confirmations. The battle began with the movement of the Takeda army. With Katsuyori's signal, the Takeda cavalry initiated their charge. Shouting, "Kai Ichiban! Kai is number 1!" They rushed at full speed toward the Oda Tokugawa formation. The sound of hooves shaking the earth, red banners fluttering in the wind, warriors' battle cries. The sight that had made enemies tremble in countless battles was about to unfold once more. However, palisades stood before them, and beyond those waited rows of musketeers. The Takeda cavalry faced an unknown obstacle.
Fire!
With Nobunaga's command, the first line of musketeers fired simultaneously. With a thunderous roar, lead bullets tore through the air, striking the Takeda cavalry. Smoke and sparks covered the battlefield, screams and confusion spread. As the first row finished firing, the second row immediately followed, then the third. Ceaseless gunfire assaulted the Takeda forces. Horses and men fell one after another. The Takeda warriors experienced firsthand an unprecedented scale of firearm baptism.
Breakthrough, forward.
Yamagata Masakage's voice echoed across the battlefield. He stood at the forefront, encouraging his subordinates. However, the Oda army's 3-line volley continued relentlessly, and the Takeda charge gradually lost momentum. Baba Nobuharu penetrated deep into enemy lines himself to secure a retreat route for Katsuyori. The great generals of Takeda fell one after another on the battlefield, but their courage would be remembered by future generations. The momentum of the charge rapidly weakened, and the cavalry was brought to a halt. The following infantry could not advance either, and the Takeda formation began to crumble. The Oda Tokugawa forces seized this opportunity to counterattack. The Tokugawa cavalry positioned on both flanks began to move, creating a situation that encircled the Takeda army. The battlefield gradually came under the control of the Oda Tokugawa forces. The once orderly Takeda army was now in a state of complete collapse. Coordination between units was severed, and the chain of command ceased to function. Commanders were fully occupied with protecting their own units, unable to deploy unified tactics. "Retreat! Retreat!" This call began to be heard throughout the battlefield. The Takeda army, which once made enemies tremble, had now begun to flee. Realizing the unfavorable battle situation, Katsuyori decided to retreat. Surrounding retainers protected him, attempting to escape from the battlefield. However, they were already encircled by the Oda Tokugawa forces, and escape routes were limited. Many Takeda forces were defeated in isolated groups. Katsuyori himself managed to escape the battlefield through the desperate efforts of his close attendants, but in the process he lost many loyal retainers. As Katsuyori left the battlefield, what might his heart have felt? Regret for tarnishing his father's name, guilt for driving his retainers to death, and anxiety for the future of the Takeda family. Various emotions must have constricted his chest.
Is this defeat the beginning of the end?
Such a premonition likely haunted his mind.
Chapter 7. Results of the battle.
It is said that the Takeda army lost about 10,000 men in this battle. The cavalry in particular suffered devastating losses. Most of the elite units developed since Shingen's time perished in this battle. On the other hand, the Oda Tokugawa allied forces' losses are estimated at about 6,000 men. Considering the difference in troop numbers, they escaped with relatively light casualties. This battle became a typical example where not just numerical superiority, but tactical innovation determined victory and defeat. The battlefield was strewn with countless corpses, blood-stained armor, and scattered swords. Both victors and defeated likely stood speechless before this devastation. Behind the glory of battle, there is always irretrievable sacrifice. In this battle, major Takeda retainers such as Yamagata Masakage, Baba Nobuharu, and Hara Toritane lost their lives. They had been pillars supporting the Takeda family since Shingen's time, and their loss was a blow beyond mere numbers. Yamagata Masakage in particular is said to have fought to the end to protect Katsuyori, securing an escape route for his lord. He repeatedly advised Katsuyori, "My lord, please withdraw," while himself serving as the rear guard. Surrounded by countless arrows and bullets, he continued fighting to the end, with the pride of Takeda's Crimson Army in his heart. Their deaths were irreplaceable losses for the Takeda family. The wisdom and courage of experienced commanders cannot be cultivated overnight. It is said that on his way back to Kai, Katsuyori called out the names of his lost retainers one by one in his mind and wept. Ironically, Nagashino Castle, which Katsuyori had sacrificed so much to besiege, surrendered immediately after the battle. With the overwhelming victory of the Oda Tokugawa allied forces, there was no longer any meaning in defending the castle. It is said that the Castellan, Tori Tsunaemon, was praised by Oda Nobunaga for his brave resistance. His loyalty and courage, which impressed even the enemy commander, would be remembered by future generations.
I shall never forget the favor once received, and will repay it even in death.
These are words Tori reportedly said to Nobunaga. His attitude of maintaining loyalty to his lord was praised as an exemplar of samurai conduct.
Chapter 8. Significance as a tactical revolution.
The Battle of Nagashino was a symbolic event that heralded the dawn of a firearm era in Japanese tactical history. The organized use of firearms demonstrated by Oda Nobunaga brought major changes to the traditional style of warfare that relied on individual techniques.
Forget past battles. From now on, iron and gunpowder will dominate the battlefield.
It is said that Nobunaga spoke these words to his retainers after this victory. His foresight led Japanese tactical history to a new stage. Subsequently, many daimyo focused on developing musketeer units. They learned from the lessons of Nagashino and understood the importance of organized firearm deployment. The turning point from individual samurai techniques to organizational tactics, that was the significance of the Battle of Nagashino. Conversely, this battle signified the end of the era of traditional mounted warriors. Tactics that relied on mobility and individual valor, praised as swift as the wind, were proven powerless against organized firearms. The defeat of the Takeda cavalry sent a great shock to samurai throughout Japan. The samurai ideal of mounted one-on-one combat with the enemy gradually became a thing of the past. Also, triggered by this battle, unit coordination and organizational strength began to be valued over the activity of individual commanders. Group tactics like the three-line volley demonstrated by Nobunaga would become the basis for subsequent warring states battles. Nobunaga prioritized the efficiency of an organized army over individual samurai valor. This perspective would eventually be inherited by Toyotomi Hideyoshi and Tokugawa Ieyasu.
Chapter 9. The Battle of Nagashino as a lesson.
Katsuyori's misjudgments provide us with important lessons in leadership. The importance of listening to the advice of experienced aides, no matter how excellent a leader may be. the flexibility to judge situations from multiple perspectives rather than adhering solely to one's own ideas. These are universal lessons that apply to modern leaders as well. Katsuyori lost many retainers through his own judgment and carried that burden for the rest of his life. This battle also presents the challenge of how to respond to technological innovation. The Takeda family had excellent cavalry tactics but failed to adapt to new firearm technology. Nobunaga, on the other hand, actively embraced new technology and developed tactics to maximize its effectiveness. The importance of flexibly adapting to changing times is demonstrated here. Finally, this battle also teaches the importance of the courage not to fight. As Yamagata Masakage suggested, there was also the option of avoiding battle on unfavorable terrain and fighting under more advantageous conditions. Retreat is not defeat. It is a stepping stone to the next victory. This is a saying left by a later strategist, but it well represents the lesson of Nagashino. Sometimes deciding to retreat or change strategy is also an important role of a leader. The courage to make calm judgments without being bound by vanity or face. That too might be an essential aspect of leadership.
Chapter 10. Impact on the Warring States period.
The defeat at the Battle of Nagashino was an irreparable blow to the Takeda family. Particularly, the loss of many experienced commanders was a problem that affected the family's very survival. An army without great generals is like an eagle without wings. True to these words, the Takeda army, having lost great generals like Yamagata Masakage and Baba Nobuharu, significantly diminished its fighting strength. The power to continue invasion campaigns was also lost, forcing them into a defensive position. Afterwards, the Takeda family gradually lost strength and was eventually destroyed by the Oda Tokugawa allied forces in 1582. Katsuyori set fire to Kofu Castle and committed suicide along with his wife and children. The glory of the once Tiger of Kai became completely a thing of the past. Meanwhile, this victory further enhanced Oda Nobunaga's reputation. Proclaiming Tenka Fubu, unite the realm through military power, Nobunaga continued to expand his influence and made great strides toward unifying the country. The victory at Nagashino proved the correctness of Nobunaga's innovative military thought and further elevated his authority. His subordinate commanders, witnessing the effectiveness of his tactics firsthand, deepened their loyalty to Nobunaga. The innovative tactics and organizational strength he demonstrated greatly influenced commanders of later eras. In particular, Toyotomi Hideyoshi and Tokugawa Ieyasu studied these lessons well and incorporated them into their own military systems. The Battle of Nagashino was not merely a single battle, but a historical turning point that greatly changed the flow of the Warring States period. The power map of the Warring States daimyo was significantly redrawn after this battle. The decline of the Takeda family, the largest power in eastern Japan, disrupted the previous balance of power and accelerated the centralization movement led by Oda Nobunaga. The path to national unification that would continue through Oda, Toyotomi, and Tokugawa began to take shape from here. Moreover, the tactical revolution demonstrated in this battle greatly influenced the military policies of subsequent Warring States daimyo. The introduction and organization of firearms, emphasis on group tactics, formations utilizing terrain, the modern military thought shown by Nobunaga, opened a new page in Japanese tactical history.
Conclusion. Learning from history.
There is much we can learn from the Battle of Nagashino. The importance of technological innovation, the essence of leadership, the balance between tradition and innovation. These lessons remain relevant even after nearly 450 years. History is not merely a record of past events, but also a treasure house showing guidance for the future. With the sentiments of the warriors who fell at Nagashino in our hearts, we too should face the challenges of our own era. Swift as the wind, silent as a forest, raging as fire, immovable as a mountain. This Takeda family motto conveys to us today the universal wisdom of maintaining unwavering beliefs while adapting to changing times. With the lessons of history in our hearts, let us also find our own Furin Kazan.
Please share your thoughts in the comments section. Thank you for watching until the end. Please subscribe to our channel and hit the like button.